Today, we are going to discuss the classical philosophies as applied to education in both classroom discussion and school management. Classical educational philosophies, idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism, form the intellectual bedrock of modern pedagogy and school leadership. Each philosophy originates from a distinct metaphysical and epistemological foundation, shaping how educators perceive learners, knowledge, instruction, and governance in educational institutions. When applied to social studies education, these philosophical traditions offer profound insight into both the content and process of teaching, as well as the overarching climate and leadership strategies within schools. Idealism, grounded in the belief that reality is fundamentally spiritual or mental, prioritizes ideas, values, and enduring truths. According to Barrow, 2010, educational idealists like Plato and Hegel viewed education as a process of bringing the mind into alignment with eternal truths. In the social studies classroom, idealism manifests through a strong emphasis on civic virtues, ethics, and universal principles. For example, a teacher might guide students through readings of classic philosophical or political texts such as Plato's Republic to foster discussion on justice, democracy, and moral leadership. Through this, students are encouraged to engage in critical reflection about the moral foundations of society. In the context of school management, idealism promotes visionary leadership centered on cultivating moral character and community values. School leaders who adhere to idealist principles are often seen fostering a culture of integrity, emphasizing purpose-driven mission statements, and designing policies that uphold a sense of higher moral duty. As Momini and Cassone, 2014, note, idealist educators and administrators tend to perceive schools as places where ethical and spiritual development precede utilitarian goals. This is particularly relevant in social studies, where themes of justice, citizenship, and historical conscience are central. Realism, by contrast, is rooted in the belief that reality exists independently of human consciousness, and that knowledge should correspond to observable phenomena. Influenced by thinkers such as Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, realism emphasizes empirical knowledge and structured content. According to Actor, 2014, educational realism promotes a systematic curriculum grounded in facts, causality, and sensory experience. In social studies classrooms, realist instruction involves data analysis, document-based inquiry, and chronological understanding of historical events. Teachers may lead students in examining census data or historical treaties to develop critical thinking and analytical skills. School management practices influenced by realism emphasize efficiency, accountability, and evidence-based decision-making. School administrators adopting this philosophy may implement standardized assessments, utilize data-driven instruction models, and promote performance metrics to evaluate staff and student outcomes. As Heilman, 2003, highlights, realism in leadership ensures that policies are grounded in practicality, aligning resources with measurable goals. In social studies education, this may involve rigorous evaluation of curriculum efficacy and incorporation of current socio-political data to maintain relevance and accuracy. Pragmatism offers a dynamic educational philosophy centered on experience, experimentation, and adaptability. John Dewey, one of the foremost proponents of pragmatism, argued that learning is best achieved through active engagement with real-world problems. According to Alharthy, 2022, Dewey viewed the school as a miniature society where students should collaborate to solve authentic issues. In social studies classrooms, pragmatism translates into experiential learning, such as organizing mock elections, community service projects, or simulations of historical events, that develop students' problem-solving and civic engagement skills. When applied to school management, pragmatism encourages flexible, context-sensitive leadership that evolves based on reflective practice and stakeholder input. Pragmatic school leaders might facilitate shared decision-making, implement iterative policy reviews, and promote professional learning communities. As McDaniels, 1983 suggests, such leaders foster environments that value experimentation, innovation, and adaptability, traits particularly beneficial in dynamic disciplines like social studies, which require constant revision in response to societal change. Existentialism diverges from other philosophies by focusing on individual experience, freedom, and self-definition. Rooted in the works of Kierkegaard and Sartre, existentialist education emphasizes personal meaning and authenticity. According to Actor 2014, existentialist educators regard each student as a unique agent responsible for constructing their own identity and values. In the social studies classroom, this might involve giving students autonomy to select topics for research that resonate with their lived experiences, such as exploring their cultural heritage or writing reflective essays on social justice themes. In school management, existentialist principles manifest through a democratic and inclusive leadership style that prioritizes individual agency. Leaders who adopt this stance often advocate for student voice, teacher autonomy, and flexible curricula that allow for differentiation. Vandenberg, 1979, notes that existentialist educational environments are characterized by open dialogue, personal accountability, and a deep respect for subjective perspectives. This fosters a school culture that supports both diversity and individuality, especially valuable in social studies, where narratives of identity, belonging, and marginalization are central. When compared, idealism and realism represent opposing metaphysical commitments. While idealism centers on what ought to be, emphasizing moral ideals and spiritual development, realism focuses on what is, advocating for empirical observation and objective analysis. In social studies education, idealism may encourage normative discussions about justice and governance, whereas realism emphasizes the importance of factual knowledge and historical accuracy. Teachers trained in both philosophies can provide a balanced approach that integrates ethical inquiry with critical investigation. Similarly, pragmatism and existentialism share a student-centered orientation, but differ in their epistemological outlook. Pragmatists view knowledge as evolving through interaction with the environment, stressing social cooperation and adaptability. Existentialists, on the other hand, prioritize individual consciousness and the subjective construction of meaning. In social studies, this distinction is evident when comparing a group-based service learning project, a pragmatic approach, with an individual reflective journal exploring personal responses to historical injustice, which aligns with existentialist values. Across these philosophies, classroom instruction in social studies can be richly diversified. Idealists might deliver lectures on the philosophical foundations of democracy. Realists employ structured inquiry into political systems. Pragmatists implement participatory simulations, and existentialists foster self-reflective narratives. Each approach caters to different dimensions of student development: cognitive, ethical, experiential, and personal. In terms of school leadership, these philosophical orientations offer distinct yet complementary frameworks. Idealist leaders inspire vision and moral clarity. Realist leaders bring structure and accountability. Pragmatic leaders encourage innovation. And existentialist leaders cultivate authenticity and voice. The synergy of these approaches can create inclusive and effective educational environments, particularly in the socially and culturally charged context of social studies. To illustrate idealist practice in the classroom, consider a social studies unit on justice that involves analyzing philosophical texts and debating contemporary ethical dilemmas. The teacher guides students toward higher-order moral reasoning, aiming to instill a sense of civic virtue. In leadership, an idealist principle might emphasize school-wide character education initiatives grounded in universal values like respect and equity. A realist teacher might design a social studies lesson that uses primary source analysis to understand legislative processes. This aligns with a principal's strategy to align curriculum with national standards and monitor progress through standardized assessments, Realism ensures coherence, consistency, and academic rigor. In a pragmatic classroom, students may be tasked with identifying a community issue, such as pollution, and working collaboratively to draft policy proposals. Meanwhile, a pragmatic administrator might support interdisciplinary, project-based learning and allocate resources flexibly based on student performance and feedback loops. Existentialist pedagogy in social studies might involve students creating digital stories, reflecting their family's migration history or experiences of political oppression. A school leader inspired by existentialism might prioritize advisory programs, personalized learning plans, and platforms for student expression to foster a deeper sense of identity and belonging. These philosophical traditions do not exist in silos, but rather offer a spectrum of approaches to educating the whole child and managing schools with humanity and intentionality. When thoughtfully integrated, they equip educators and leaders with the intellectual versatility needed to meet the diverse and evolving challenges of contemporary social studies education. Thank you very much.